So this week, I don't think any of us are working. I mean, well, not working. It's kind of, yeah, we're not really working. Yeah, we're doing things that aren't really client-facing. So Richie's doing the same thing he always does. He's always working, but the rest of us are doing different things, blog posting, working in Postgres, Power BI, OStress. So Tara was working in SQL Query Stress and OStress yesterday and today.
Yeah, I was very, very frustrated with SQL Query Stress. It's a great tool. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great tool, but when I was running it on my desktop with the load I was running, I'm trying to reproduce a client issue from last week so I can blog about it, and SQL Query Stress, so I'm running perfmon looking at CPU utilization, batch requests per second, and CPU utilization would be pegged at like 100%, and then I noticed SB Blitz first told me that the CPU utilization was outside of SQL Server because I wasn't even looking at that detail, and so I was like, okay, I know how to do this. I can check Task Manager, but easier to look at perfmon. So I pulled up SQL Query Stress, and it was that tool that was using all the CPU. Even just one of them was using like 20 or 30%. And for whatever reason, Adam coded it to have a maximum of 200 threads, which is not sufficient for what I'm trying to do. So I was running like 5 or 6 of them, and I was encountering thread pool weights, of course. I was encountering all sorts of issues, but that's why it was 100% CPU, because I was running multiple instances of it.
But that's a blog post in and of itself. When outside,
true.
outside things cause thread pool and other CPU pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, so I ended up moving SQL Query Stress to my laptop, but then I couldn't connect to my desktop. I was troubleshooting, doing like desktop support on connectivity. I ended up having to turn off the firewall, enable TCP. I didn't realize TCP/IP isn't enabled by default in newer versions. It was in prior versions. I'm not too sure why they did that. But I know how to troubleshoot this stuff. But it was like 2 hours of just like, oh my God, what is this? Yeah. Why can't it connect on the private network here?
Really, that sounds like me yesterday when I saw one of Eric's queries he put up there.
What I do?
And I immediately had to go in and change it so a human can read it. So.
To be fair, half of that, the top half of that was Brent's. The bottom half of that was mine.
Either way,
that wasn't. We had a really ugly baby.
This is true, and so we should, as a database company, it's really funny how all of us are like, well, Richie, how do you want us to format our queries? Because none of us really care. We're just like, as long as there's some app we can paste it into, and it just immediately dumps out the formats. And Richie's like, no, I do this by hand. And so we just put in our most unbelievably ugly formatting. I don't even try and use anything. And then Richie gets it, and he has to make sense of this hot mess.
Well, I mean, but since I'm bringing all the writing all the unit tests or the integration tests, I need to go and make sense of it anyway. So as I'm going through and reformatting, it's just okay, here, and I'm writing down what tests should be. And it's like, oh my God, what? How many different permutations of this should I actually do before would make sense? And how much time do I have to do this thing?
And God knows there's never any comments in our queries.
Actually, there was one that you wrote yesterday I was working on that the comment was like right in the middle of the SQL statement. And I'm like, let's move this up a little bit. That kind of breaks the readability a little bit.
I do. I tend to write them next to the joins. I'm joining to this because of this.
Yeah, next to the join is fine, but it was like on a separate line, just like right in the middle. And I'm like, okay, that's the intent of what we're trying to do. We'll move that to the top of the query, and just so you're reading it from top down, it just kind of flows.
People will laugh if those queries ever get public. All right, let's go ahead and tackle your technical questions. Josh says, I'm using in-memory OLTP in a synchronized AG. But as it turns out, my workload does not warrant in-memory OLTP, and I'd like to back it out now. However, I can't find the Hackathon ejector seed handle. Books Online says I need to drop the database. Do you have any creative ideas on how to do this without minimizing downtime? Oh, yes.
I mean, nothing. Can't you just not use the feature? I mean, so what if it's enabled, as long as you're not using it?
That's true. That's true. You could just stop using it. You'll still leave the file group there, but who cares?
And what I wouldn't trust is that like any of like the weird hackathon bugs would just affect it having it's enabled, so like you're exposed to these bugs even if you're not like directly using it. Like there just might be something floating that just having it turned on causes that I would freak out about.
There's a restore one in one of the recent 2017 CUs. I want to say there was a restore if you had Hekaton, you couldn't do a restore under some circumstances. I was like,
it's like for the same reason that I won't hang pictures with command strips over the bed, because I'm just afraid of like middle of the night, like just crashing down on top of me. Like over the bed, I'm using nails, like cement, like epoxy, like whatever I can get up there. I'm terrified of like just, you know, outside of my control things. And Hekaton, you turn that on, you can't turn it off. It's outside of your control. You might have yourself exposed to all sorts of weirdness just having it turned on.
so speaking of that, so then in that case, you'll like what we did. We, at one point in Mexico, we bought a bunch of wooden or wooden carved hearts. They're three-dimensional. They're like probably 2-3 inches thick. And so Erica was absolutely determined to put these over the bed. And they're not flat. They're heart-shaped. They're bulbing and all. So she put command strips on the back, and she was holding them to the wall, you know, where the bed is. Everything seemed cool, and in the middle of the night, like once a week, a wooden heart would just fall on us. In the middle of the night. Well, after a couple of weeks of that, we're like, okay, yeah, we're not doing that.
More superstitious people would like start sleeping in different rooms, get divorced. It's
the hearts are knocking us on the head. Josh says that's why I'm trying to get rid of it, to reduce the exposure to Hekaton bugs. Golly, yeah, if you wanted to really get rid of it, the closest thing that I can get is to do like SSIS or something to export all the stuff out of your database over to another database, and then like maybe right at the last minute use something like Redgate data compare in order to find edge case stuff that didn't get caught. But man, it is not going to be pretty.
There are a lot of command strips on that answer.
Yeah, there are a lot of command strips on that answer. Over the bed.
I mean, like, I guess you could, like, shrink the file all the way down, set it to, like, read-only, no auto-growth, and, like, but still, it's there and doing stuff. I don't know. I forget I said anything. Terrible idea, too.
Chris says he's looking at sysdmdb index usage stats. He says, on my table, there's 300,000 user lookups on a primary key. I think that user lookups means the number of bookmark lookups by user queries. Is that true?
I've never looked at that column to see what it means.
It should be easy enough to understand to go test. So what I'd always recommend to people, because I love demoing that DMV and operational stats, is go create another table. Go create a table with nothing in it. Go put 5 rows in it and build yourself several different execution plans, and you can keep seeing how those numbers change. In a perfect world, go ahead. I was going to say in a perfect world, also do it in a different database that you can offline and online again quickly so that those stats reset.
I was just going to say, even if this is the bookmark lookups, that doesn't mean they're a bad thing. I mean, you're going to have bookmark lookups. I mean, the fact that he's saying bookmark lookups means he's as old as us and has been using SQL Server for a very long time. So I catch myself and say bookmark lookups still, but these days people call it key lookups. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. You're not going to be able to cover every single query. You know, some of your queries are going to need to return to so many columns that you don't want a non-clustered index that covers the entire thing. So you have to do a key lookup at that point. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. You have to examine the execution plans and look for the expensive key lookups. And if you want to improve those, maybe consider a covering index or look at Erik's select star information. Do you have a blog post on that? I mean, I know you have a presentation on it, but
yeah, I have all sorts of things on that.
Yeah. So that presentation will show you how to do the key lookup or how to avoid the key lookup without a covering index. So it can do like index intersection or do it later on so it's not as expensive.
I would just like to point out that everyone sees that I have Chrome now. I have Google Chrome on my virtual machine. I finally left the
system in 2008. Stuff.
Why, when I search for Erik Darling select star, I get Erik Darling every time I go to town?
Oh yeah, there's a folk singer named Erik Darling.
Dead.
Lies, it's just you.
You
like,
know,
Doc Martens.
Burgeoning folk career wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that
I like when you say darling, though, you have to say it in Rob Farley's voice, though. I mean, because it's really
That's true.
Very specific about that.
I love it.
Chris
Where
says,
is Rob Farley? I feel like I haven't seen him do anything online in a while. It's like hiding.
Rob's going to be the only one who gets this joke, but Rob is in Australia. Rob, ha ha ha. He's probably not even going to hear that, but
no.
All right, there we go. Pablo asks, hola amigos, in some times of day when I have high concurrency, ASYNC Network IO goes up and users feel like everything is slow. How can I help, or what should I check?
And then he says, no application code available, because that's an important thing, because I love seeing that wait stat, because it means the problem is not in SQL Server. I get to step away as a production DBA. A sysadmin, jack of all trades type person is going to have to troubleshoot this, but as a SQL Server DBA, I'm like, oh, problem's not mine. So as far as I know, there's 3 things that can impact it. It's almost always an application bottleneck. It can be an application server issue. If you don't have enough memory or CPU, the application server could be struggling. And then the third one is a network issue, but it's almost never a network issue. It's usually an application bottleneck, where it's doing row by row processing while SQL Server is trying to fire hose the data to the application. So unfortunately, it is not. There's nothing to do inside SQL Server. You're going to need to look external.
Unless you're just shoveling way too many rows at the application.
True.
So
yeah.
Yes. If your user uses this, like have a dashboard where they're looking at the top 500 things and you're shoveling like a million rows in there, you could probably page that query or just cut it down a little bit in some other way to stop shoveling that many rows at the app server. But generally, Tara's right. Just some noodlehead just wrote a for each loop to like present things, or some weird presentation layer stuff that goes on once the data hits the application that just isn't processing things as fast as you'd want.
I did see a recent server that the queries were sending over it was something like 50 million rows each time, but the application was then applying paging to it. So it would then filter it down to like 50 rows or something like that. So they didn't do the filtering until the application got the data. I was like, yeah, this isn't the right way to do things.
Which
sounds like what we were doing back in 2003.
Exactly, yeah. And we didn't even have 50 million rows back then.
That's right. That's right.
2003, there were like, what, 5, 10, 15,000 rows at most? It was like nothing then.
Yep.
Peaches.
I think one clue too might be, when you say it's really busy, you get this. I would go remote desktop into your app servers, and they might be doing 100% CPU swapping to disk, no memory left. We've had a couple of those where we go remote desktop into the app server, and it's like got 2 cores and 4 gigs of RAM, and the thing's just falling over.
Exactly.
Eric's phone.
Phone has more.
Marcy says, Richie's comment reminds me that she's really enjoying Eric's sense of humor in the recent blog posts. They remind her of the early Brent Ozar posts. They make you think, did he really just say that?
Would that be the Jeremiah stuff?
Yeah. Don't say it. Brent.
It's like,
No humor.
It's been a long time since I said anything offensive. I got to go dig back up to that.
Eric's got a wicked sense of humor. Smart sense of humor, but wicked.
I'm going to edit your statement, Brent. It's been a long time since you said something offensive publicly. How's that?
Touche.
We do have fun in that company chat room.
We do. This is probably the most fun part of our jobs, is just we have a company chat room, Slack, which is why I stopped spending so much time on Twitter, because it's so much more fun now in Slack, because you can be as offensive as you want to be, throw GIFs in there, which is a horrible thing for a company owner to say. I can be as offensive as I want in our company chat room. It's probably words that I'm going to regret and come back to haunt me later, but amusing.
And now we have them recorded. Thanks, Brent.
Yes, yeah. And especially with my wife being the human resources department, and she's way more offensive than I am.
She swears she's not HR, by the way. She swears. You're the closest person.
Meanwhile, yeah.
Also not it, so.
Yeah. If she ever got hit by a car and I had to handle payroll and insurance, you would know just how good of a human resources person she is, because can you guys use 50s to pay for your surgery?
By the way, I'm going to get 10 surgeries. A lot of stuff going on.
Please get a receipt this time. Ron asks a question that makes me want to be offensive. Ron says, why would I want to use a contained database?
That's a good question. I've never used them.
And the silence tells you everything. So the idea was that you would be able to deploy a database with all things like agent jobs and logins in it, and then you could like vMotion it around the way you move a server around in virtualization with Hyper-V or VMware. That ship just sailed, though. Microsoft totally missed that trend, and we were just so much better off using virtualization for that. So it just died on the vine.
Well, that in cloud, right? So they also tried to move that idea into the cloud where you deploy the entire database in the cloud, and then everyone kind of realized that, well, that's kind of a silly idea.
And they all wanted things that weren't in the contained database. They all wanted agent jobs. They all wanted all kinds of stuff. Ron says, I was asked that by a client, and that was my response also. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
I guess if I wanted to do anything, it was like, so what's the behavior in a contained database that you're looking for, or that you're looking to emulate? You know, it's like, what do you want to get out of it? Or did you just hear the word and think, oh, I want a contained database? Because that happens to people sometimes. It's like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that. I should do that.
I don't want my database not to be contained. I mean, what if it gets out? I don't know.
Put a leash on that thing, man. Give it a name.
Renukadavi asks, please tell us the steps to follow during a SQL Server migration from 2012 to 2016.
That'll be $79.95.
And there's no decimal point in there.
There's a comma.
Yes, exactly. Not a decimal point.
So why is it that when someone asks us to sketch out a new build or a new infrastructure for moving from 2012 to 2016, why can't we do it in a paragraph?
You know, it's one of those things where like when you like think about the high level stuff, you come up with so many like just dead on showstoppers for like things you can't do, won't do, ways you want to do it, and then like when you get even further into the details of like things that you have going on in one place and like getting all that stuff moved over. You know, like it's easy to think about the easy stuff like, you know, logins, agent jobs, and that stuff. But then like, you know, you get into like, you know, I should use a new cardinality estimator or anything like that. And this is just a lot more testing and planning than you would ever want to get into in a single paragraph. Like you could ever do justice to in like a single paragraph.
Yeah. Guillermo says, I sent a question through the Contact Us page at BrentOzar.com regarding the training season pass about 2 weeks ago, but haven't received a reply. He says, what's the estimated reply time? I haven't seen that. If you want, just shoot us another email. Go ahead and send us an email. There's also an email address on the page. Try that. Maybe something went wrong with the web form. But and you can also ask us here, too, if you like.
You know, a lot of people send in questions and mistype their email address, and we go to reply, and we just get a bounce back. And it's, you know, there's like no way for us to like fix the email address, and this is not ever often like, you know, at gamel.com. It's always just like some name butchering we can't fix.
42 characters in it.
Yeah, exactly.
Pablo says, if I don't have any long-running blocking situations, can THREADPOOL be related to the need to add more CPUs?
THREADPOOL or Deadpool?
Which reminds me, and I shouldn't change the question, but are you going to see Deadpool on, when it comes out, or are you going to wait a while?
It comes out tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm going to see if I can talk my wife into going on our anniversary, since we saw Deadpool on Valentine's Day.
Nice.
She'll be into it. Don't worry.
Wow. Well, happy anniversary in advance. Congratulations.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. I mean, 1 year is a long time to make it. It's impressive. You should be proud of yourself.
Or 19, or same year for 19 years. I don't know.
No time at all. All right, so THREADPOOL. If you're facing THREADPOOL weights, do you need to add more CPU?
Perhaps.
You could, yeah.
Like I would want to take a look at a few other things first, though, before I go and spend those licensing bucks on SQL Server stuff. Like, do I have max stop and cost threshold for parallelism set right? Have I tuned my queries and indexes so that like only like the really necessary ones are actually going parallel and doing parallel things? Because all those parallel queries, they go out and they'll ask for is like, you know, a whole, well, that's for dot threads per parallel branch of their execution. So it's like they can ask for a whole lot more threads than just, you know, like DOP. Right? Everyone's under the impression that, you know, you set max stop and that's the number of cores that SQL Server can use, and that'll also cap the number of threads. But there is no such cap on that number of threads with max stop. Max stop will use a whole mess of stuff. So that's really important to keep in mind, especially, you know, if you're, you know, what sucks to me, like when I think about like max worker threads and max stop and all these other things, is when your max worker threads for between 1 and 4 cores is 512. There's no change. So SQL Server thinks that like for a single core and 4 cores, the best thing you can do is 512. So like doesn't like, and then after that it doesn't double, right? You go up to 8 cores, you don't get, you know, you don't get 1,024. You go up to 16, you don't get like 20,048. Like it just goes up by like tiny increments. So like you don't even get that many more worker threads like per per CPU increment. So early on, you're much better off like tuning the server, tuning settings, tuning queries and indexes to keep things, only necessary things from going parallel from the get-go.
It's a great post there. What not to do when adding always-on availability group databases by Warwick Rudd, and he goes into more detail with that with the little chart. While you were talking, you reminded me too of this question over here from John Smith Sr. about SQL Server threads and degrees of parallelism. Or was it this one, or I could have swore there was a Paul White one. I gotta go dig.
No, there was a Paul White one somewhere on there.
Hang on, I gotta find that. All right, cool. All right, let's see. Next up, we have Daryl says, we use auto-tiering on our SAN with a few different RAID levels, but I like RAID 10 for our log files as well as tempdb. I've noticed an increase in disk I/O after I set up tempdb with 4 files, but our processes run in the same time frame. With tempdb, should I auto-tier it so that it moves around to SSD? My thought on auto-tiering, I adore auto-tiering. I'm a huge fan of it. Because the problem is you don't know which servers are really going to be active. You don't know which servers are going to have a really hot and heavy tempdb, which ones are going to be sitting around bored. And it changes all the time. You know, the more SQL servers that you have, the harder it is to predict that stuff. So I'm all about stuff like auto-tiering. I know that the more admins that you have, the more people that you have, the more tempting it becomes to micromanage it. Like, I know that this one should be on RAID 10, and I know, because maybe you have a server that's really busy and it's worthless. For example, when I was at DBA, there was one server that just sucked at tempdb, just absolutely hammered it. But it was our website tracking software. Every time employees would go surf the web, it would log stuff into the database. And we're all like, we don't care what performance is for that because it's a back-end server that nobody cares about. So we can just relegate that to the crappiest storage.
You don't have one of those, do you? Because I let some other people use my computer sometimes. I don't know what they do, so I'm just...
I share my hotspot with on the street. There's a big sign.
It's weird. I don't know. It's like a whole communal thing out there. I just wanted to double check.
Yeah, I have a policy around our employee internet that's don't ask and don't smell. I just don't want to know. No. It was funny when I first got Erik a cell phone, way back in the 90s or like late 99, early 2000. I got her a cell phone as a Christmas present. She's like, you just want to track what I'm doing. And I'm like, no, seriously, I don't care. I don't. You can do anything you want. It took probably 6 months before she realized it, and she's like, you're not mad at me for anything I've texted? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to look at the phone bill. I don't care. It's like, oh, okay. So then she got into it. Joe asks, we have a long-running select over 3 hours that has an estimated subtree cost of 0.003, and it's stuck in the sleeping state. It's going to keep running until we kill it. How should I resolve that?
I would love to see the query plan for that.
Query plan, what is it waiting on?
Well, and if you say suspended, I'm curious.
Well, it says it's sleeping, so sleeping. I wonder if...
Should be able to do it within tran. Yeah, I was going to say, or explicit transactions. So I'm going to use Stack Overflow.
Is there a narcolepsy wait type? I don't know.
Tell that query to stop smoking weed, man.
Boom. All right, so I got that select running. Now, while that's running, I'm going to go pop over and run SP who is active in another window once that thing finishes. So SP who is active. So I have a query here. It shows as sleeping, and it really doesn't even matter what the cost of the query is. But once that query is sleeping, it's just because somebody either started a transaction or they have an implicit transaction open. It's not doing anything. It might be holding locks open. To check to see if they'd begun a transaction and held locks, you can do get locks equals 1. And then this is going to return a little property bag, a little XML property bag here. You can click on it, and then it'll show you if they have any tables locked. Odds are they just had a begin tran somewhere and didn't commit anything, but it's just selects. If it looks like this where it's only just a schema level lock on the entire database, it's fine. You can kill it. But if they have a whole bunch of objects involved, then that's where I'd get a little nervous.
Brent just showed his age by using the term property bag.
Property bag. How old is that, too? It's probably...
I believe that was like VB. When I first started using VB and VB3, that was there.
All right, well, that's all the questions we've got for this week. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out with us this week at Office Hours, and we will see y'all next week. Adios, everybody.
Adios.